our border patrol agencies, our TSOs that deal with aviation security, our cargo inspectors. As it relates to that work, our front line, let us waive this legislation. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the bill only requires agencies to do what common sense and current laws dictate they should be doing right now. The Department of Homeland Security is not exempt from the Regulatory Flexibility Act. Like other agencies, the Department should analyze how a new regulation will affect small businesses before issuing the regulation. If the Department needs to issue a regulation in a true emergency situation, such as one involving national security, it can already do so under the good cause exception to notice and comment rulemaking in the Administrative Procedure Act. This good cause exception would allow the agency to bypass the analysis required by the Regulatory Flexibility Act as well. As written, the amendment would exempt the Department from H.R. 527, but not from the Regulatory Flexibility Act itself. The result of this would be two versions of the Regulatory Flexibility Act at play in the federal government, one for the Department and one for everyone else. Small businesses do not need any more confusion and uncertainty when they are trying to participate in the federal regulatory process. For these reasons, I oppose the amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentlelady. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Texas will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 3, printed in Part A of House Rule 112-296. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 3, printed in Part A of House Report Number 112-296, offered by Mr. Cohen of Tennessee.
Pursuant to House Resolution 477, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee.
Thank you. I yield myself such time as I may consume. This amendment would exempt from this particular bill the rules it has when it relates to food safety, workplace safety, consumer product safety, air quality, and water quality, things we all hold dear, things that will be jeopardized if this bill passes. As I noted in my opening remarks, this threatens to halt agencies' ability to promulgate rules by adding analytical requirements and numerous opportunities for industry to challenge agency rulemaking. Yeah, you should be able to challenge agency rulemaking, but courts shouldn't be able to summarily throw them out based on a lack of knowledge that they have of an area where the agencies are really experts. But that's what would happen. The societal cost of enacting 527 would be to place public health and safety at risk. As we enter this holiday season, it will be well to remember that in this season we take for granted that the food we eat and the water we drink and the drinks we drink at all our holiday dinners and receptions won't kill us or sicken us because of effective rulemaking. Likewise, we can take for granted toys given to children and grandchildren won't poison them because of strong regulations. But the consequences of failing to regulate can be dire. In 2006, 24-year-old Jillian Castro became gravely ill after eating spinach tainted with E. coli bacteria. Her organs were rapidly deteriorating, her kidneys were failing, her red blood cells and platelets were dropping rapidly, and she nearly died. According to the best available estimates by public health and food safety experts, millions of illnesses and thousands of deaths each year in this country can be traced to contaminated food. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that foodborne microorganisms cause 48 million illnesses, 128,000 hospitalizations, and 3,000 deaths. Many of these could be avoided with proper regulations from Food and Drug. That's why I ask that food safety be eliminated from this bill, because it will be expensive to treat these people, let alone the fact that they will die. The CDC estimates salmonella alone affects 1 million people a year. Just today, the Food and Drug Administration issued a recall of grape tomatoes because of potential salmonella contaminations. Other recent examples of regulatory failure include the listeria-tainted cantaloupes that killed 29 people across the country in October, pedal entrapment issues that caused cars to accelerate unexpectedly and resulted in Toyota's recall of nearly 2 million vehicles, Mattel's recall of nearly 1 million toys in 2007 because they were covered in lead paint. There are other examples of this. Public health and safety precautions have been on the books for a long time and were passed with bipartisan support. And the fact is there were more regulations during President Bush's term than there are during President Obama's overall when you calculate the time they've been in office. But there was no call when President Bush was in to cut back. There is only when President Obama's in office. The Pure Food and Drug Act was enacted in 1906 by Teddy Roosevelt. Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in 1938. Clean Air Act and Occupational Safety Health Act were enacted by 1970 when Richard Nixon was president. The Clean Water Act was enacted in 1977. They've served our country well for many years. And if H.R. 527 is enacted without adopting this amendment, we can no longer take protections from these harms for granted. Because in the future, agencies will be hamstrung from passing regulations to protect the public. I would urge us to pass this amendment and protect our workers, our consumers, our small businesses, our small business people when they eat their breakfast, their lunch, and their dinner, when they buy their toys for their children and their grandchildren, when they drive their cars, and when they work in their workplaces. I yield back the balance of my time and ask for a positive vote.
Gentleman yields back. Who claims time in opposition? Gentleman from
Chairman,
Texas.
I oppose this amendment.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, even the President and his regulatory czar, Professor Cass Sunstein, admit that overregulation hampers job creation. The Regulatory Flexibility Act of 1980 is based on the fact that regulatory compliance is especially costly for small businesses, which are America's main job creators. In this economy, we have no room for error when it comes to overregulation. The bill ensures that all agencies follow the Regulatory Flexibility Act. H.R. 527 does not ask agencies to do anything that they should not be doing already right now. There is no reason to create the blanket exemptions proposed by this amendment. There are no such exemptions currently in the Regulatory Flexibility Act for the categories of rules described in the amendment. Further, the amendment would create tremendous confusion among agencies and small businesses regarding which version of the law would apply to a future rulemaking. We need less confusion and uncertainty, not more, in the regulatory process. If the amendment stems from a concern about the ability of agencies to make rules in emergency situations, I would note once again that agencies may avail themselves of the good cause exception to the notice and comment rulemaking process already in the Administrative Procedure Act. If an agency justifiably invokes this exemption, it will not have to conduct the analysis required under the Regulatory Flexibility Act. For these reasons, I oppose the amendment. Yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee.
No further. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Tennessee. I'm sorry. The gentleman from Texas yielded back his time.
I yielded my time back
Thank
as well.
you. The question is now on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Tennessee. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I'd request the yeas and nays in an auditory test.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of 18, the further proceedings on this amendment will be offered. The amendment offered by the gentleman from Tennessee will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 4, printed in Part A of the House Report 112-296. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Peters of Michigan.
Pursuant to House Resolution 477, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Peters, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time that I may consume.
So recognized.
Mr. Chairman, there is no question that Congress must act immediately to help our nation's small businesses succeed, create jobs, and boost our economy. Unfortunately, instead of moving common-sense legislation to extend the payroll tax cut for middle-class families and enacting the American Jobs Act to help small businesses afford new hires and investments, we are today considering H.R. 527, the Regulatory Flexibility Improvements Act. This legislation, while it is well-intentioned, is a step in the wrong direction. In addition to making it more difficult for agencies to take action to protect workers and the public, it will also slow down agency guidance that could help create certainty and spur job creation. This bill will create paralysis by analysis by subjecting any action an agency proposes to a lengthy regulatory process. Even agency guidance issued to small businesses clarifying how they can comply with existing rules will be slowed down considerably. This is why I put forward an amendment to improve this bill and cut through the additional red tape that it creates when it matters most, and that's when new jobs are on the line. My amendment simply says that the new administrative hurdles that this bill creates will not apply to any rule, final rule, or guidance that the Director of OMB determines will result in net job creation. While my Republican colleagues keep repeating the story that new regulations are slowing down our economic growth, this simply isn't the case. A recent study by the National Federation of Independent Businesses of its members found that poor sales and not regulation is the biggest problem facing businesses today. Effective regulations can promote job growth and put Americans back to work. As someone living in southeast Michigan, I've seen firsthand the way increased fuel economy standards have made American autos more competitive while also saving drivers money on gas and helping our environment. According to the United Auto Workers and the National Resources Defense Council, these new standards have already led to the creation of more than 100,000 jobs. Whether it is providing small businesses with the guidance they need so that they can have the certainty while making investment and hiring decisions, or enacting environmental reforms to help bring about the next generation of green technology, the federal government cannot waste any more time dragging its feet when it comes to job creation. For years, my friends on the other side of the aisle have repeatedly railed against government red tape. But let's be clear, if they oppose this amendment, they will in fact be voting to create more red tape and stymie small business job creation. I urge my colleagues to support this common sense, pro-jobs amendment. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Does the gentleman yield back, or is he reserving his time?
I'll reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Texas. For what
Chairman,
purpose?
I oppose the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to claim the time in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to close, so I'll reserve my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Michigan? Gentleman from Michigan actually has 2 minutes remaining.
I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas?
Chairman, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out that the National Federation of Independent Businesses actually does support this legislation. Also like, for the record, to show that a recent Gallup poll taken on October 24th of this year said that small business owners themselves cite, quote, complying with government regulations, end quote, as their most important problem. Now, that's why we are here today. Mr. Chairman, I oppose this amendment because it puts the cart before the horse. The reason we require agencies to conduct regulatory flexibility analysis is so the agencies and the public will know how a new regulation will affect small businesses before the agency issues the regulation. The amendment would exempt from the Regulatory Flexibility Act any rule that would result in net job creation. We certainly know that regulations can destroy jobs. Even the administration acknowledges that. Whether regulations can ever truly create jobs is another question altogether. Assuming that a regulation could create jobs, an agency will not know this without analysis first, which is what the bill requires agencies to do. There is no good reason to transfer this responsibility to conduct this analysis from the agencies themselves to the Office of Management and Budget as the amendment proposes. For these reasons, I oppose the amendment, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman, request the yeas and nays.
The gentleman requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. It's now in order to consider Amendment Number 5, printed in Part A of House Report 112-296. For what purpose does the gentlewoman, no, who's doing this one? Gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the bench.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 477, the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'd like to think that our colleagues are in their offices communicating with their constituents and doing much of the work that we do and writing probably other great legislative initiatives, and they're paying attention to this debate, and they keep hearing the word small businesses, and they want to know why would any of us have a disagreement about small businesses when we have, I think, have a consensus that small businesses are in fact the backbone of America. They are the job creators of America. I recall many of us have initiatives. I have an initiative of visiting small businesses, and just a couple of weeks ago I donned the clothing of a medical practice. I went to a beauty school and tried to do a little bit of hair design. I went to an energy company, went on to a small export-import company, and I stood out as a safety officer for a construction company owned by a single mother. So we all speak the language of small businesses, and you would think that my good friends on the other side of the aisle would have looked more closely at how damaging H.R. 527 is. For those who may be listening in their offices and others, right now you have a 3-agency framework of reviewing regulations dealing with small businesses. Now you're going to include that all the agencies have to get into the act in stifling small businesses' activities and their growth and opportunity. Remember now, right now we have 3, and then we're going to open up the lot so that every agency now has to go through a regulatory process to determine its impact on small businesses. It expands the use of small business review panels to include rules promulgated by all agencies, include all major rules, and some of these, of course, having the positive impact on our small businesses. What is a significant economic impact? Nobody knows. It forces agencies to engage in wasteful speculative analysis. It imposes an absurd and wasteful requirement on those agencies. So I have a simple amendment. Ask the question beforehand, what is the economic impact of all this vast new inclusion of other agencies to come down on our small businesses? It requires my amendment, a GAO study, to determine the cost of carrying out this bill and the effect it will have on federal agency rulemaking. Simple, bipartisan amendment. I ask my colleagues to join me on supporting it. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Does the gentleman from Texas claim time in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, I do. I oppose the amendment.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to close, so I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Texas. Gentlelady actually has 2.5 minutes remaining.
I thank the gentleman. Let me just continue looking for bipartisanship. I'm hoping that I can convince my friend from Texas to not desire to have a can of worms, a potpourri of agencies coming out with the hand of oppression on small businesses. This is a simple question that I'm asking. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, simply would be asking the question, what is the significant economic impact on a substantial number of small entities, which will greatly slow down the rulemaking process and substantially empower other competitors to small businesses to throw sand in the gears of rulemaking that will help small businesses, woman-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, disabled veterans. What is the reason for not agreeing to an important study? It forces agencies to engage in wasteful speculative analysis, including an assessment of all reasonably foreseeable indirect economic effects. We can do it ahead of time. Will this kill jobs is the question. It expands judicial review to include all agency actions and not just final agency action. Mr. Chairman, can we not find an opportunity to come together on this? I would much rather have a report to tell me how many small businesses will shut down waiting for agency review of the rules that would be helpful to them. Have we engaged with the Small Business Committee? Has anyone asked the ranking member of that committee even the chairman of that committee, who are champions of small business. I don't think I've seen the chairperson, but I see the ranking member who listens to small businesses across the country. If there is a regulation that is going to help a small business, this bill kills it. The small business is hanging on for dear life. Pass the rule, pass the rule. Now you put in all these agencies diddly-daddling around trying to be able to find a way to stifle the growth of the small business. Mr. Chairman, common sense tells members that it doesn't hurt to have just this one bipartisan effort to get the answer of the economic impact beforehand. Down in Texas, we say, close the barn door before the cow gets out, or the cart before the horse before the cart. We've got all of that. We've got confusion. I'm simply having a simple amendment that would allow the GAO to report on how we can better serve our small businesses and create the jobs that are necessary. I ask my colleagues, including Mr. Smith, to support this amendment. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield myself the balance of my time.
So recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I oppose this amendment because it is unnecessary and would result in a biased study by the Government Accountability Office. The study proposed by the amendment focuses excessively on costs to agencies to comply with the Regulatory Flexibility Act and how the bill would affect agencies' abilities to pass new regulations. The study would not focus enough on how the bill would benefit small businesses and lead to better regulations, which is where our focus should be. It is worthwhile to require agencies to finally comply with the law. That is especially true if it means that agencies will reduce unnecessary regulatory burdens and free small businesses to create jobs. In the future, I certainly would like to know whether agencies comply with the Regulatory Flexibility Act as amended by this bill, or whether they remain disobedient. This amendment, however, favors the idea that the bill places too heavy of a burden on regulators. Fundamentally, the purpose of the Regulatory Flexibility Act is to reduce the regulatory burden on small businesses, not on agencies. Job creators, not job regulators, are the key to our economic recovery. Mr. Chairman, for these reasons, I oppose the amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Aye will be sufficient. Those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I'd like to have a vote on the yeas and nays, please.
Gentlelady requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 6, printed in Part A of House Report 112-296. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition? Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Johnson of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 477, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of my amendment to this hazardous and radioactive bill called the Regulatory Flexibility Improvements Act. Now, I want to I want this body to consider my amendment to this bill for the following reason. The FDA, Food and Drug Administration, Food Safety and Modernization Act became law in January of this year, January 4th of this year. It was necessitated by a continuing series of incidents such as the October 2009 Stephanie Smith incident, which I will tell you a little bit about. She's a children's dance instructor from Minnesota and became partially paralyzed from E. coli. According to a New York Times article, quote, the frozen hamburgers that the Smiths ate, which were made by the food giant Cargill, were labeled, quote, American Chef's Selection Angus beef patties. Yet, confidential grinding logs and other Cargill records show that the hamburgers were actually made from a mix of slaughterhouse trimmings and a mash-like product derived from scraps that were ground together at a plant in Wisconsin. The ingredients came from slaughterhouses in Nebraska, Texas, and get this, Uruguay, and from a South Dakota company that processes fatty trimmings and treats them with, get this, ammonia to kill the bacteria. Stephanie has sued Cargill, and I know that many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would want to limit her ability to recover for this injury through misguided so-called tort reform. But getting back to this matter, this amendment is simple. It would ensure that Americans have access to safe and untainted food. It would create an exception for any rulemaking that seeks to carry out the FDA Food Safety Modernization Act. Every year, 1 in 6 Americans get sick from foodborne diseases. The FDA Food Safety Modernization Act enables the FDA to better protect public health by strengthening the food safety system. This bill would make it virtually impossible for the federal agencies to protect public health and safety. Nobody likes to be tied up in red tape, but this bill would bring regulations to a halt and make it virtually impossible to enact new regulations. Currently, rulemaking agencies must make an analysis for every new rule that would have significant economic impact on a substantial number of small entities, such as small businesses. However, agencies have the authority to waive or delay this analysis in emergency situations. Now, this bill, Mr. Speaker, would require agencies to determine the indirect cost a rule has on a business, and it would repeal the authority of an agency to waive or delay this analysis in response to an emergency that makes timely compliance impractical or imprudent. This summer, there was a listeria outbreak linked to cantaloupes that sickened 139 people and killed 29. Just today, the Washington Post reports that Consumer Reports released an alarming study that found high levels of arsenic in samples of orange juice. Consumer Reports is now calling on the FDA to set standards for arsenic levels for apple and grape juices. The Consumer Reports group is now suggesting that parents restrict juice consumption to children up to 6 years old to no more than 6 ounces per day. For older children, it recommends no more than 8 to 12 ounces a day. Now is not the time to hamper agencies such as the FDA that are charged with keeping the American public safe. If there is a legitimate concern that our food supply may be tainted, the FDA needs the authority to act quickly and without delay. It's essential that the FDA have the ability to conduct inspections as well as prevention programs without having to go through speculative paralysis of analysis of a proposed rule, nor should the FDA be forced to re-justify existing rules. Mr. Speaker, I urge support for my amendment, and I'll reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Does the gentleman from Texas?
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I oppose this amendment because it carves out an exemption to the bill for regulations under the Food and Drug Administration. If agencies were going and doing the depth of pre-regulatory analysis they are supposed to be doing under the Regulatory Flexibility Act, then we wouldn't be here today. Small businesses create jobs, and jobs are the key to economic recovery. To help small businesses, like minority-owned restaurants, for example, create jobs, we need to reduce, not increase, the regulatory burden on them. The FDA is not currently exempt from the Regulatory Flexibility Act, so it makes no sense to exempt it from the FDA from the bill either. This amendment also would create confusion within the FDA by exempting only its responsibilities under the Food Safety Modernization Act from this bill. There should not be two versions of the Regulatory Flexibility Act in play at the FDA. For these reasons, I oppose the amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yielded back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Gentleman asks for a recorded vote, and pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in Part A of House Report 112-296, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 2 by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. Amendment number 3 by Mr. Cohen of Tennessee. Amendment number 4 by Mr. Peters of Michigan. Amendment number 5 by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. Amendment number 6 by Mr. Johnson of Georgia. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for electronic vote after the first series of votes. So the unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 2, printed in Part A of House Report 112-296 by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Okay, fine. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
The House wrapping up work on a bill requiring federal agencies to review existing regulations. The bill also expands the ability of small businesses to challenge federal regulations. 5 amendment votes. This first one, 15 minutes. Sheila Jackson Lee has an amendment which would exempt from the bill all rules promulgated by the Department of Homeland Security. This one is 15 minutes, and the remaining votes will all be 2-minute votes. Earlier today, the House did pass by a vote of 235 to 190 a bill that terminates the Presidential Election Campaign Fund and also ends the Election Assistance Commission. Over in the Senate, they continue work and may finish work today on the Defense Authorization Bill, the $662 billion Programs and Policy Bill. Debate continues, and you can follow that on C-SPAN 2. Also today, it's World AIDS Day, and the President was speaking in Washington earlier saying that no other country has done more work to combat HIV and AIDS, but he also noted that there's more work to be done. He was at a speech, he gave the speech at an event commemorating World AIDS Day at George Washington University. We're going to show you the President's comments during the remainder of this 15-minute vote.
Please have a seat. Well, thank you, Sanjay. It is an honor to be with you today and follow President Kikwete and President Bush, to Bono and Alicia, to the One Campaign. Thank you for bringing us together. Because of your work all across Africa, there are children who are no longer starving, mothers who are no longer dying of treatable diseases, fathers who are again providing for their families. And because of all of you, so many people are now blessed with hope. We've got members of Congress who've done so much for this cause who are here today, and we want to thank them. Let me also thank President Bush for joining us from Tanzania and for his bold leadership on this issue. I believe that history will record the President's emergency plan for AIDS relief as one of his greatest legacies. And that program, more ambitious than even leading advocates thought was possible at the time, has saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives and spurred international action and laid the foundation for a comprehensive global plan that will impact the lives of millions. And we are proud that we have the opportunity to carry that work forward. Today is a remarkable day. Today we come together as a global community across continents, across faiths and cultures to renew our commitment to ending the AIDS pandemic once and for all. Now, if you go back and you look at the themes of past World AIDS Days, if you read them one after another, you'll see the story of how the human race has confronted one of the most devastating pandemics in our history. You'll see that in those early years, when we started losing good men and women to a disease that no one truly understood, it was about ringing the alarm, calling for global action, proving that this deadly disease was not isolated to one area or one group of people. And that's part of what makes today so remarkable, because back in those early years, few could have imagined this day, that we would be looking ahead to the beginning of the end, marking a World AIDS Day that has gone from that early beginning when people were still uncertain to now a theme getting to zero. Few could have imagined that we'd be talking about the real possibility of an AIDS-free generation. But that's what we're talking about. That's why we're here. And we arrived here because of all of you and your unwavering belief that we can and we will beat this disease. Because we invested in antiretroviral treatment, people who would have died from AIDS, some of whom are here today, are living full and vibrant lives. Because we developed new tools, more and more mothers are giving birth to children free from this disease. And because of a persistent focus on awareness, the global rate of new infections and deaths is declining. So make no mistake, we are going to win this fight. But the fight's not over, not by a long shot. The rate of new infections may be going down elsewhere, but it's not going down here in America. The infection rate here has been holding steady for over a decade. There are communities in this country being devastated still by this disease. When new infections among young black gay men increased by nearly 50% in 3 years, we need to do more to show them that their lives matter. When Latinos are dying sooner than other groups, and when black women feel forgotten, even though they account for most of the new cases among women, then we've got to do more. So this fight is not over. Not for the 1.2 million Americans who are living with HIV right now, not for the Americans who are infected every day. This fight is not over for them, it's not over for their families, and as a consequence, it can't be over for anybody in this room. And it certainly isn't over for your president. Since I took office, we've had a robust national dialogue on HIV/AIDS. Members of my administration have fanned out across the country to meet people living with HIV, to meet researchers, faith leaders, medical providers, and private sector partners. We've spoken to over 4,000 people. And out of all those conversations, we drafted a new plan to combat this disease. Last year, we released that plan, our first ever national HIV/AIDS strategy. We went back to basics, prevention, treatment, and focusing our efforts where the need is greatest. And we laid out a vision where every American, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, can get access to life-extending care. And I want to be clear about something else. Since taking office, we've increased overall funding to combat HIV/AIDS to record levels, with bipartisan support. We reauthorized the Ryan White CARE Act. And as I signed that bill, I was so proud to also announce that my administration was ending the ban that prohibited people with HIV from entering America. Because of that step, Next year, for the first time in 2 decades, we will host the International AIDS Conference. So we've done a lot over the past 3 years, but we can do so much more. Today I'm announcing some new commitments. We're committing an additional $15 million for the Ryan White program that supports care provided by HIV medical clinics across the country. We want to keep those doors open so they can keep saving lives. We're committing an additional $35 million for state AIDS drug assistance programs. The federal government can't do this alone, so I'm also calling on state governments and pharmaceutical companies and private foundations to do their part to help Americans get access to all the life-saving treatments. This is a global fight, and it's one that America must continue to lead. And looking back at the history of HIV/AIDS, you'll see that no other country has done more than this country, and that's a testament to our leadership as a country, but we can't be complacent. I think this is an area where we can also look back and take pride that both Republicans and Democrats in Congress have consistently come together to fund this fight, not just here, but around the world. And that's a testament to the values that we share as Americans. A commitment that extends across party lines, that's demonstrated by the fact that President Bush, President Clinton, and I are joining you all today. Since I took office, we've increased support for the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria. We've launched a global health initiative that has improved access to health care, helping bring down the cost of vaccines, and over the next 5 years will help save the lives of 4 million more children. And all along, we kept focusing on expanding our impact. Today, I'm proud to announce that as of September, the United States now supports antiretroviral treatment for nearly 4 million people worldwide. 4 million people. And in just the past year, we've provided 600,000 HIV-positive mothers with access to drugs so that 200,000 babies could be born HIV-free. And nearly 13 million people have received care and treatment, including more than 4 million children. So we've got some stuff to be proud of, but we've got to do more. We're achieving these results not by acting alone, but by partnering with developing countries like Tanzania and with leaders like President Kikwete. Now, as we go forward, we've got to keep refining our strategy so that we're saving as many lives as possible. We need to listen when the scientific community focuses on prevention. That's why, as a matter of policy, we're now investing in what works, from medical procedures to promoting healthy behavior. And that's why we're setting a goal of providing antiretroviral drugs to more than 1.5 million HIV-positive pregnant women over the next 2 years, so that they have the chance to give birth to HIV-free babies. We're not going to stop there. We know that treatment is also prevention. And today we're setting a new target of helping 6 million people get treatment by the end of 2013. That's 2 million more people than our original goal. And on this World AIDS Day, here's my message to everybody who's out there. To the global community, we ask you to join us. Countries that have committed to the Global Fund need to give the money that they promised. Countries that haven't made a pledge, they need to do so. That includes That includes countries that in the past might have been recipients but now are in a position to step up as major donors. China and other major economies are in a position now to transition in a way that can help more people. To Congress, keep working together and keep the commitments you've made intact. At a time when so much in Washington divides us, the fight against this disease has united us across parties and across presidents, and it shows that we can do big things when Republicans and Democrats put their common humanity before politics. So we need to carry that spirit forward. And to all Americans, we've got to keep fighting. Fight for every person who needs our help today, but also fight for every person who didn't live to see this moment. For the Rock Hudsons and the Arthur Ashes, and every person who woke us up to the reality of HIV/AIDS. We've got to fight for Ryan White and his mother Jeannie, the Ray brothers, and every person who forced us to confront our destructive prejudices and our misguided fears. Fight for Magic Johnson and Mary Fisher and every man, woman, and child who, when told they were going to die from this disease, they said, no, we're not. We're going to live. Keep fighting for all of them because we can end this pandemic. We can beat this disease. We can win this fight. We just have to keep at it. Steady, persistent. Today, tomorrow, every day, until we get to zero. And as long as I have the honor of being your president, that's what this administration is going to keep doing. That's my pledge. That's my commitment to all of you. And that's got to be our promise to each other. Because we've come so far and we've saved so many lives, we might as well finish the fight. Thank you for all you've done. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you.
Back live to the House floor. This is the first amendment vote, the first of 5 in a bill that would require federal agencies to review existing regulations. That expands the ability of small businesses to challenge federal regulations. Here's an amendment by Sheila Jackson Lee, which would exempt rules from the made by the Homeland Security Department. This first vote, 15 minutes, but you can see there are a lot of members who have yet to vote. The following 4 amendment votes will be 2-minute votes. Over in the Senate today, they have continued work on the 2012 Defense Authorization Bill. The Associated Press writing a final vote expected today on the $662 billion measure that would authorize funds for military personnel, weapon systems, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and national security programs in the Energy Department. It's possible the Senate will finish it today. Also pending is work on the expiring payroll tax cuts. Senator Reid had filed cloture looking for a resolution on wrapping up the debate on that, on the payroll tax cut, by the end of the week. But it is yet to be seen whether that will be voted on. The Democratic and Republican plans this evening. We caught up with a Capitol Hill reporter who's been covering the issue. Christina Peterson is a reporter on tax policy for Dow Jones Newswires. Senate Republicans have unveiled their plan to pay for a straight extension of the 2% payroll tax cut that expires on December 31st. How much is their proposal expected to cost, and how is it paid for?
Well, their proposal is actually expected to reduce the deficit. They have some pretty significant spending cuts that they would use to pay for not only the cost of the tax break, but also to reduce the deficit over 10 years. And primarily those come from shrinking the size of the federal government's workforce and establishing a 3-year freeze on their salaries. It wouldn't be straight layoffs. They've said the government would be able to hire 1 new civilian for every 3 people that retires. But over 10 years, it's supposed to shrink the workforce by 10%.
In broad terms, how's the Republican plan different from the plan the Democrats proposed earlier this week?
Well, the Democrats want to continue the tax break that was agreed to last December, but also to make it a bigger tax break so that people would pay Social Security taxes of 3.1% of their earnings. Right now it's at 4.2%. Republicans would keep it at that 4.2% level. Both plans would do this for 1 year, but Democrats would also extend the tax break to employers, and Republicans would not do that.
And how will Democrats pay for their plan?
Well, they would prefer. There's sort of some Democrats would prefer to just have it out there and not have to offset it. But the version in the Senate is a 3.25% surtax on people who make more than $1 million in a year. So not a millionaire per se, but someone whose income this year is greater than $1 million would have this additional tax, and that's something that Republicans really just can't stomach.
So it looks like there's broad agreement on a payroll tax cut, but what will it look like? When's the Senate expected to vote, and what's the outcome of these votes when it does happen?
Right. Well, the Senate is expected to vote tonight on both the Democrat and the Republican proposals. Both of those votes are not expected to succeed in advancing the measures. So we'll have to see, what they can come up with in the next couple of weeks that could be a palatable compromise. There is this broad agreement that they do need to extend this tax break so that workers' paychecks don't shrink next year, but they don't seem to have settled yet on whether or how to offset its cost. The House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi did say today that House Democrats would be open to a reasonable pay for, but she said this reduction in the federal government's workforce isn't something that they could accept.
Christina Peterson covering the payroll tax cut issue. She's a reporter with Dow Jones Newswires, and we thank you for the update.
Thank you.
And there's no word on whether or when those votes on the payroll tax cut measures will happen in the Senate. The pending business still continues to be the defense authorization bill. Back here in the House, the first of 5 amendment votes on the bill, on the federal regulations bill, that the first of 2 that the House will deal with this week. This one is one that would require federal agencies to review all existing regulations and give small businesses the ability to challenge some of those federal regulations. First Amendment is Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas has an amendment that would exempt from the bill rules that are made by the Department of Homeland Security. This has been a 15-minute vote. All of the following 4 amendment votes will be 2-minute votes.
On this vote, the yeas are 173. The noes are 244. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment number 3, printed in Part A of the House Report 112-296 by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in Part A of House Report number 112-296, offered by Mr. Cohen of Tennessee.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. A 2-minute vote.
Steve Cohen of Tennessee has an amendment which would exempt from the underlying bill any rule that relates to food safety, workplace safety, consumer product safety, air or water quality. Again, the underlying bill changes the way that federal agencies write new regulations. It requires them to do a cost-benefit analysis, allows small businesses to challenge some federal regulations.
On this vote,